Yeah.
It's got to wait till 7:08.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
now
I'll start.
7:02.
Okay, I'm going to cancel the elections and elections ordinances meeting tonight.
Great.
I don't have any business for Personnel and Human Services Committee tonight, but I do want to say that we're starting to collect donations for the fireworks. They're scheduled for July 3rd, which is a Tuesday. They'll start at 9 o'clock at night, and it's only 71 days away. So we are accepting donations and really hoping to make this a fun 4th of July. This is not something that's funded by the city at all. It's all through donations, so we really do rely on them. And that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to call the council office. And thank you.
I'd like to call the City Property and Claims Committee to order at 7:06, 7:05, 7:06. And it consists of myself, Councilor Blair, and Councilor Holmes. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 motions on the docket. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding the donation of $125 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Studley Elementary School. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro.
Second.
Thank you. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Any questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. On the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding the donation of 4 cases of diapers and 1 case of assorted items, including baby lotions, bibs, pacifiers, bath toys, diaper cream bottles, and water bottles with an estimated value of $300 from Father Ted Brown of La Salette to the Children's Center at Attleboro High School. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro.
Second.
Thank you. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns? Okay. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Veterans Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. And I gave the names of them, but it's a Royal typewriter, it's now obsolete, and a keyboard trade, which is a generic model, and it's used.
Second.
Any questions, concerns regarding those items? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. On the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Personnel Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. An electric typewriter, it's a Royal,
I feel like you just did.
wait a minute.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a different one.
Okay.
Royal 5005 XC S/N075. It's in poor condition, and an adding machine, a Canon MP31D S/N02214, also in poor condition.
Second.
Any questions, concern regarding those? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. And finally, from the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Fire Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. It's a 1996 E1 fire engine, VIN number 4END-AAA88T1005891. It's got 97,883 miles, and it's in poor condition.
Second.
Okay, any questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. And that is all I have for the City Property and Claims Committee. At this time, I would like to request an adjournment at 7:10.
Yep, whatever time that was on.
I'm looking at the one in there, 7:10. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's the end. That's it.
Thank you. I'd like to call Public Works Committee to order at 7:10. I have one motion before my committee this evening with regards to a 2005 street sweeper through the Public Works Department, and I've asked Superintendent Michael Tyler to join us this evening. Michael, if you wouldn't mind just coming up, please. Thank you. Before I read my motion, because before I read the motion and bring it out to my committee, I thought I'd ask Superintendent to join us this evening, because it's only been a week and there's been a lot of changes with our street sweepers. So I wanted everybody on the council to be aware of what has happened. Originally, the motion came down and the mayor had asked us to repair their 2005, which I'm going to call sweeper number 1. So we have a 2005 sweeper that we bought used and thought maybe we'd get like a year or 2 out of it, and we were actually able to get 5 to 7, I think, years out of it, which is great. We bought it used for approximately $25,000. They had to put $4,000 into it before they even got it going. So it lasted us a pretty long time, and it also tells me that we have pretty good mechanics over there in the Public Works Department. And then we have sweeper number 2, which is 2001, and we bought that used as well, and that's lasted us, you know, we've had that now 3 years. And we also had sweeper number 3, which is a 1996, which we recently traded in because this council voted to approve for a brand new sweeper in February. And they traded that in for like $1,000, but they were using that 1996 as parts for sweeper 1 and 2, who, you know, when they broke down, they just took them off and they would just use them. So that's why the trade value alone was just like $1,000. Well, we approved a brand new street sweeper back in February. Somewhere along the lines, and I don't know where it happened, but that purchase order was lost when it should have been processed immediately, because there's only one company in the United States that makes street sweepers. And we got on there, they have like an A, B, C, D list, so they make so many, and they know who they're going to sell them to right away. And you're just on that list. Then you have to wait for the second list to come out, and you're able to get on that one. Unfortunately, because somewhere along the line that paperwork got lost, that did not get processed, so we did not get on the A list. So we still don't have our brand new sweeper. And here it is spring, and everybody's happy right now because it's green, and the parade came out the other day, and we're unable to do that, to clean up our streets. We also, in the meantime, in April, the month of April, we always rent out, the city of Attleboro rents out for 1 month sidewalk sweepers. And I'm gonna, the way that I gathered this correctly, this is just in my own mind, a sidewalk sweeper goes in and does the sidewalks, and it brushes it into the street. So then our street sweepers come along, and they're right there to grab up all the stuff, because street sweepers basically eat dirt for a living. That's what they do. It's pretty gross. So right now they can't even do that because our street sweepers are broken. At first, last week, it was just the 2005 that needed to be repaired, but since then, sweeper number 2, the broom, or it's called the gutter broom, which is the side, you'll see it brushing up, and it cleans up all the gutter and it sucks it all up. That broke on sweeper number 2. So one's broken, we're waiting to give it $11,000. Now sweeper 2 broke, and we have no street sweepers. We're still waiting for that brand new one because we're on B list now. Hopefully that'll come in by the end of May, and you're going to correct me if I'm wrong. Hopefully it'll be ready for us by the end of May. So we're way behind schedule now on cleaning up our streets. And you know, motorcycles, families are getting out there with their bicycles, just pulling out of your own street. I'm sure you sound like you're dragging. Isn't that what they call it? Car dragging or whatever they speed out. So we're in a little bit of a tither. So I've asked Michael to come here this evening because personally I'm unsure. Do we approve for this $11,000 to fix one, or because we don't know if it's going to break again, and it's going, you know, I mean, I know we always have that problem with machinery, but we're down to one up until Friday. Now we have absolutely none because sweeper number 2 is broken, sweeper number 1 is broken, and they're just trying to gather parts. So we may end up with one that, of course, is comprised of a lot of used parts, and we're taking it, do we throw away $11,000 and then know that we have to dump another $20,000 in, or do we bite the bullet? I don't know. So I brought it up for, I'm bringing it up for discussion for all of us this evening so that we're all aware of what exactly is going on, because I don't want the superintendent to come to us again in 2 weeks and say, I need another $20,000. And we're like, hey, we just gave you $11,000 to fix one. What's going on? So Michael, if you wouldn't mind just letting us know now where we're at. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councilor Jackson. And I think you did a very good job of explaining it. If you could pass those out, just so I hastily put this together this afternoon so we can compare 1, 2, and 3. I know we originally told that the number 1 was in 1999, but I went back as far as I could, trying to find out information and looking at the vehicle list, and it's actually a 2001. So I just want to make sure that we.
So that's sweeper 3, because sweeper 1 is 5.
In the presentation I'll have in front of you, I
have it backwards. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Oh, he takes 3. Thank you.
So just to reiterate, and piggyback on what you said, Councilor Jackson, yes, the original request was for a little over $11,000 for a gearbox, in which would be sweeper number 2 on the list in front of you, which is a 2005. Again, you're correct, that was purchased used, I believe, maybe 6 years ago, around there, as a stopgap measure to get us to a new sweeper. Since that time, when the request has been put down to the City Council, our sweeper number 3, as I call it on this list, of 2004 that we were using, the gutter broom assembly on the driver's side, if you will, which is the street side, the gutter side, I should say. That gutter broom assembly basically came right off the machine. It has a big snap ring that holds that onto the shaft. The shaft itself was so worn that the snap ring was no longer able to sit into the groove. It was 3/4 gone, which we showed you in the garage the other day.
Yes.
After you left, thinking about how long it would take, even if the City Council was to approve for the gearbox and for the the new gutter assembly, we're talking 6 weeks away. Getting these parts, there is only one vendor. It's Elegant. It's sold by CN Wood. It's the only vendor in the Northeast that you can do this. They have territorial rights, so it's not like you got Chevy, Dodge, or whatever. This is just one vendor, and that's it. So after that, I told them, I said, we have to do something. So I told them, the 2 mechanics, to go out and take the gutter broom assembly off of sweeper number 2, which has the broken gearbox, and see if that could be used on sweeper number 3. So they spent over 2 days, 2 mechanics, 2 days, doing it. It's a big job. And they got that one on there, and we're hoping to put that online tomorrow and keep our fingers crossed that it's going to do the job. It's awful heavy sweeping in the spring when you get all the sand on the road. It's not like you're going out in July or August after we've done the first round, where it's a lot lighter, a lot lighter materials. So I did make that call because I can't be sitting here with no sweeper at all. We have to make some effort to get back online with something. As you stated, we do rent sidewalk brooms for a month. This one, usually we get them for the month of April. We put it off a couple weeks this year because Mother Nature didn't make her mind up yet whether or not winter was done. So we're hoping she's done now, but so now we've gone 1 week where we have sidewalk sweepers sitting in our garage that are rented because I have no main sweeper to pick up out of the gutter. So people say, why can't you do the sidewalks anyways? Well, if you take it off the sidewalks and put it in the gutter of the road, the cars come along and all they do is they sweep it right back onto the sidewalk. So I just want to explain that. So again, we have a 2001, I'm calling sweeper number 1, and that is the one that we've taken every available part off of, and that is the trade-in for the $1,000 for the new sweeper. Sweeper number 2 has a 2005. That one needs a new gearbox, and now it's going to need a right side gutter broom assembly, which we sweeped over to sweeper number 3, which I call Franken sweeper, because we've just taken parts off of every other sweeper to get this thing to work. And again, It's 2004, we're in 2018. Just the work that this, the machinery does, it's very tough on any machine when you're sweeping up dirt and leaves and construction waste and stuff like that. It's very tough environment for any type of machinery to do that. So that's where sweeper number 3 is right now. Like I said, we're hoping to bring that online tomorrow. Keep our fingers crossed. So on the next page, we kind of talk about, street sweeping facts a little bit. I wanted everybody to have a visual of what the sweeper looks like. I know some people, I kind of get ahead of myself. I start talking about it. They said, you lost me in the first sentence, but I don't even know what a sweeper is. I don't even know what you're talking about. So I'm trying to just give you a little bit of visual. So in Attleboro right now, we have 183, 184 of accepted roadways. We have more than that, but just accepted, that's what we have. We also have about 85 miles of sidewalk that has to get done. There is a safety factor, as Councilor Jackson just related to. We want to make sure that the motorcycles are coming out, pedestrians and stuff like that. Sand on corners is not doing anybody any good. It's also important because it's a stormwater plan. Every municipality has to have a stormwater plan. And in that stormwater plan, it talks about how we sweep the streets, how many catch basins we clean. So basically, we have to keep a list all winter long of how many tons of sand, how many tons of salt, how many tons of ice melt that we use on our roads, and report back to the state of what we've done as a city to get that stuff away from our infrastructure, so it doesn't enter into our infrastructure, I should say. So it's very important. Street sweeping is a very important part of that. We have cost savings. Just so everybody knows, the city sweepers, when we do construction projects and we grind the roads or whatever, we utilize our own sweepers to clean that debris up off the road after, in between when they mill it, and then back again before they put the binder coat and the top coat on there. That's significant because to do that, the rental things right now are about $150 to $175 an hour if we had to have a contract to do that. So the costs go really up. And that's, of course, yes, it can be paid for by Chapter 90, but by us doing it, there's a very significant savings in that. The last one I would say is there's been a little confusion about this. So when we talk about, we do have every year, I'm not sure how long ago they started it. I'm hearing 15, maybe Councilor Blair would know better than I would. They have incorporated in the snow budget $20,000 for street sweeping for a contractor to come in to give us the initial hit after the snow to get the sand off the roads. So everybody says, well, how many miles do they do? And we say 134 miles. And we're like, well, the city's only 185. They have to understand that's called curb miles when you put it out for bids. And you got to remember, there's 2 curbs on each side of the road, so realistically, you're doubling the length. So I just want to make sure everybody's on board with that one. It's when you read it on paper, it looks awful good until I put it on a map, which I showed Councilor Jackson the other day. It's basically a third of the city. So what they try to do with the contractor, if you can just envision your mind from West Street to Locust Street, if you drew a line and then went south, that's where we have the contractors go. So that's all it does. It doesn't accommodate anything into the city part, the downtown, and it certainly is not in the country. So I just want everybody aware of what that means. Because it can get really confusing when somebody says that to you. The last part is what I had. And I did a memo to the mayor on this a while ago, and I believe you brought it to Council President Cooper. This is how I have to look at it. We have a new gearbox for $11,000, a gutter broom assembly for $7,500, and then new tires on it for about $1,500. So I can't honestly stand in front of you and say that that is money well spent. I can't. I mean, it's 2004, 2005. I would not want to come in front of you a month and say, well, the $20,000 you just gave me, well, it didn't do it. The sweeper broke down again. There's nothing we can do about it. So like I said, I can't honestly stand in front of you and say that that's money well spent. From what I'm gathering, being a little new to the job in Attleboro, is that they've always had 2 street sweepers in Attleboro. The third was brought online because of the other 2 being in such a deteriorated condition that they were a stopgap measure to get us to a new sweeper. And as Councilor Jackson said, now we're down to 0. So you have, in my option, in my mind, I say, I would rather see a new option on that. How much is a new sweeper? $216,000. They're very, very expensive. There's no doubt about it. But again, there's only one brand, and that's what they're made to do straight. Some people see the vac sweepers out there. I think many of you might have seen those. Maybe at Emerald Square Mall, they're white and they basically suck stuff up instead of sweeping it in. Those are good for parking lots. They're not good for roads because roads have crowns on them and they go up and down and all over the place. It's not a level surface that's made for a type of vac sweeper. So instead of buying outright, which it's kind of hard to stand in front of the city council and say thank you for $216,000 in February, and here I am in April saying I'd like another $216,000. I know it's not realistic. But we do have another option. And that's a 5-year lease through Chapter 90, which would be approved only because they will not approve us for a sweeper to do maintenance of our road. Can't use Chapter 90 money for maintenance. It only can be for road construction. So we'd be putting this paperwork in as that sweeper would be used for construction jobs. When we go to do the milling, sweeping it up and stuff like that. So the main purpose of that machine through Chapter 90 would have to be for road improvements. We can't write on there that that's for maintenance of our streets. CN Wood did give me an estimate on that, and it's a 5-year lease. It'd be $46,000 a year, and after 5 years, we of course own that. I'd be the first one to tell you that we don't receive enough chapter money as it is, Chapter 90 money. We don't. We need at least triple or quadruple the amount of money we have to maintain our roads. Any superintendent in surrounding communities will tell you that. So I would really never recommend to use Chapter 90 money for capital expenditures, but in this instance, I think it's the only way I can stand in front of you and say that, you know, the money best spent would be something along that avenue. That's just my opinion. You know, you guys are the ones who hold the purse strings, if you will, but I just don't want anybody here to come up to me after and say, you just gave you $20,000, now you're coming back next month and telling me you're down to zero again. I just won't do that. So, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. So Michael, the stormwater compliance, we have to report to the state how much we put into the roads, how much sand, and then we have to report to them like that we took out the appropriate amount. So we're really far behind then, right? Wouldn't we be right now because we haven't been able to?
It's only done in a year. You know, if you can do it once a year, everything, that's the best way, but most municipalities, they want to do everything twice. So it's only at the end of the year report they look. We're doing the NIPTES report right now with Conservation. So they're asking for it in April to, you know, if you've complied with your permit or whatever. So they ask those numbers. So it's not like they come up to us and say, you haven't done anything to this point. It would be next April if we would have put in there that now we've reduced it in half what we've done, then we would get ourselves in trouble. That means we're being
So that's like a fine. We'd probably get fined then? I'm guessing we would get fined?
If we have to do something quick, I'd have to say that.
Okay.
I mean, we couldn't go a couple months and then realistically think that we're going to make up those 2 months. It's just not with all the other work that has to be done.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Parika?
Thank you, Chairperson Jackson. Mike, thanks for coming in tonight. I have a couple of questions for you, but first, before I ask my question, I would like to make a small request. When this whole issue is solved and we have street sweepers that are functional and cleaning our streets, would it be possible to maybe not clearing the main roads at 7:30 in the morning, like, you know, County Square and North Main Street? I get a lot of phone calls about that, so if we could maybe plan accordingly, maybe send them out at like 8:30 instead for those areas, that would be super helpful. Because my phone blows up with pictures being like, I'm trying to get to work. Same thing when I was a bus driver. I'm stuck behind a bus. It's the same thing, but I have publicly made the request, so now everyone can calm down a little bit about that. You don't have to answer. So I guess I have a couple of concerns. So any way we look at it, it'll be months. It'll be 6 weeks to 2 months before we get the sweeper that we approved in February. And if the mayor sends down a communication making the request for us to approve either the lease option or a straight out buyout for a new one, what's the interim plan? In between now and then, what are we gonna do?
Well, we're hoping that tomorrow, that when we put that sweeper back out there, that it's gonna do the job. As far as the new sweeper, Councilor Jackson's right. Now, I did not receive a purchase order, which I think we all know that I can't place an order without that purchase order in hand.
Right.
I didn't receive that till March 29th. So, and we are calling CN every day, telling them that we have a drastic need here, and they're doing everything we can to make sure that we get that as soon as possible. So, in the meantime, I hate to say it, but you're keeping your fingers crossed, because if I brought the money in front of you, I actually do have the paper right here. It's a very specialized service. So, writing it down, I'm sorry, I'm getting older to put my glasses on here.
Right there with you.
So I did do a breakdown to the letter, on a letter to the mayor. So if we wanted to do a machine rental of a sweeper, okay, it's $15,000 a month. A month. If we want to have an outside vendor come in, okay, you're talking about $30,000 to get us up to plan. And then again, we're kind of working on their schedule, not ours. And that's the flexibility factor, I should say. I said the new sweeper is $216, so it's not a common, it's not like trying to go out and get a backhoe or a loader or something like that and go to a rental company to have them. It's a very specialized machine. So our option, and I hate to tell you, Councilor Preaker, is we're keeping our fingers crossed that, you know,
May I
we're in a
follow
bad
up?
spot.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So is there so in our past practice has been to buy secondhand at a significantly, it would be half of one year of the lease rate is what you were, like, picked one up for 25 grand or things like that. Is that a possibility? Because we would be able to take,
We checked, there's none out there. There's none.
okay.
That was one of the first things we checked, Councilor Preaker, was to see if there was some type of option just to get us, I mean, I hate to keep saying we're doing stopgap measures to get us somewhere, but if we had to do it, we would, and it's not even, there's nothing out there to our knowledge.
Okay. And if we opted for the 5-year lease option, that machine would only be able to be used for like road improvement cleanup. Would that be accurate?
We could use it for other things, but the primary purpose of it would be
Okay.
for road improvements, yeah. Once we get a machine from Chapter 90, which Attleboro hasn't done much of because they have a very good capital improvement plan, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be spending chapter money for that, but I think in this case, that my recommendation is only because we're in a really bad spot. And that's a way where the city doesn't have to come right up with that type of capital.
I can think of one way where we could take one thing off and put that on with the Chapter 90 funding. Just saying. That completes, for now, I'm all set. Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. Councilor Conti.
I think there was others ahead of me.
Go ahead, Councilor Dolan.
Thank you. So if we were to decide on fixing, this would go to sweeper number 2? Like all these funds, the new tires and everything?
Yep.
And then, okay, so then if we did the 5-year lease, we would have those restrictions, and then we'd end up paying $230,000 for it at the end of 5 years, because that comes out to extra $15,000 rather than the $216. But typically, if everything was running, would we have to, like, street sweeping time in Attleboro, we send out 2? Is that right? Is that what we would
Yes,
typically
Councilor,
do? If we had
yes.
2 functioning
There's always
ones,
been 2 sweepers.
they would
As
both
far-
be out there.
I'm going back as far as Bobby can tell me. So basically, over the last 25 or 30 years, they've always had 2 street sweepers. Going out, one that mainly stays with the ones doing the sidewalks.
Right.
And then the other one would be doing the roadways.
Zone. If we wait for our new one, I mean, is that possible? So if we wait for the new one, it would just push everything back later than normal?
It's already back. It's
Well,
already
do
back.
that?
Yeah.
It's already back. Far.
It's already, so we're still going to have, like, if I may, so the one that they like put together, combined to make one, is going out tomorrow and is going to start doing some things. And once we get the new one will start doing what it's normally supposed to do as well. But
Which one's going out tomorrow? Franken?
That's
No, Franken's-
Number 3.
Franken's going out tomorrow if everything,
That's going out tomorrow, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed.
fingers crossed, we get Franken out there. Okay.
But I just want to say, Councilor Dolan, that, as I explained to Councilor Jackson, is that, you know, that's one gutter broom assembly on one side of the machine. There's one on the other side of the machine.
Right.
And then when you have gearboxes and gutter broom assemblies that are going bad for this type of money, that tells me, just like if I, my own personal vehicle, once I've got to a point where I'm spending so much money that I'm going, what am I doing here? I have to make a decision whether or not I'm going to keep dumping money into something that could be a lost cause, or I have to look for something more dependable.
Right, so you're here telling us this, but you have, massive hesitation on asking for this, like putting it, using it. Like if we were like, here, you're like you don't seem like it. You seem concerned that if we were to fork over this money, and then 2 weeks later, it's like, somebody.
Oh, absolutely, but I mean, I don't know how to put it the right way. I mean, if you need a vehicle to get to work, then I would have to say that. I mean, on a short term, I would have to spend the money to make sure I can still get to my employment, but in the long term, I know that I have to.
It could last us all season, or it could not.
Yeah.
We just don't know. Thank you.
You're welcome. President Cooper.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike, for coming in. I had a lot of conversation with the mayor about the request for the sweeper, and I think that we have we have some older equipment here. We have some new equipment here that we could put $11,000 in today, and tomorrow it breaks again. And that's just the way that it is. I also remember the discussion about the new sweeper for $216,000, and the sell on that, the buying that $216,000 sweeper was that it was newer, it was better, it was faster, it could do the job, it would give relief to the other two, which now you'd be down to one because the other one is gone. So I'm not there yet on spending another $216,000 or quite frankly $46,000 out of Chapter 90. I know he doesn't have to ask us to spend that. But if the primary purpose is road construction, and that's what we tell them for Chapter 90, that's what we have to do. That's my opinion. I think renting is a reasonable option at $15,000 until the new sweeper comes in. I would support that. You have to do something. You can't rely on putting things together while we spend the money. And if it costs us more money, then that's okay. Just can't see $450-ish thousand, $432,000 to be exact, sitting in the garage down there after you've used them pretty intensely for the couple of months at another sort of potential might happen scenario, when we have a lot of those scenarios here. The bucket truck at Forestry is a perfect example. We had a brand new bucket truck. We had a windstorm. I was running around the city. Where'd the old bucket truck go? And you have it down at DPW, and the day before the wheel fell off. But the thing's fixed now, right? The wheel fell off. The old bucket truck that nobody had, it was a piece of junk. We couldn't use it anymore. You guys took it, and the wheel fell off, and now it's fixed again. So we have that scenario all the time. That's the nature of the beast, and that's the nature of the big equipment in this nurse's opinion. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like, I get it, but I'm not there with spending another money on the sweepers that, when we don't even know sort of what the impact of the new sweeper will be to the use of the, yes, we know we'll have to use a second one to do simultaneous work, but I'm not there. But I am there with the repair money. I would be okay if it ended up being more when you started taking it apart. That's what happens. And I would be okay with money to rent one in the meantime. You've got to do something. You're sort of at crisis stage right now, and that's my opinion. So thanks for coming. We've talked about it, and I just think $400 grand for sweepers is just too much for me to take right now.
If I came with that,
Please, go ahead.
President Cooper, I just kind of hinged on the comment about how they sit in the garage after. That's not the scenario with the sweepers. They do the initial spring cleanup, and then once construction season starts, which this year will be much earlier than it has been in Attleboro, I'd like to pick it up in July and August. Those machines will be constantly out on the road, because when we grind all these roads, those machines go right behind them. And I think the thought process in you know, anybody that's done this job would, you don't take your new sweeper and put it into the construction zones with this heavy millings. That's what you use your old sweeper for, because you will take the life expectancy of a new sweeper doing construction work like that, and you will cut it in half easily, just because of the nature of what it's doing. You're not sweeping up like sand and cigarette butts and cups and stuff. You're sweeping up millings that, you know, a grinder that put onto this roadway. And as soon as something travels onto that grinding, it naturally wants to almost adhere right back to the roadway. So it's just, I just want to bring that to your attention. It's not like they sit there, because we have all types of events, whether or not they want to. I know the downtown probably gets done 10 times a year. Then you got your parades, you have your expos for the census, all these other things. So, you know, of course, we want to make sure that the roads are, you know, as clean as possible. So I just don't want you to come away with that conception that they, you know, we go around once, we do all the streets, and then we park them in the garage. That's not accurate. That's all.
Go ahead, do follow.
Thank you. Thank you. So I don't necessarily disagree with you that they are used frequently, but I think you're going to do exactly that same thing which you said you shouldn't do with a new sweeper. You want to buy a new sweeper for 46 grand over a 5-year lease, and its primary purpose is going to be for exactly what you said we don't do. So that's where I'm conflicted, right? So if we don't, and that's what I was sold on, which is what sort of got me cranked up about the street sweeper to begin with, and equipment in general, is that we were sold on, or at least I was sold on when the presentation was made, that this new sweeper would be the primary sweeper, which would save and extend the life of the other, at the time, 2 sweepers. So that's where my hesitation lies. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Blair. Then Council Reynolds, and then Council DeLisio. Thank you. And then Council Conte.
Coming from a non-nurse and from a mechanical background, I tend to agree with Mike. I would not put that kind of money in this sweeper. You haven't even got that down to the case yet. The case could be bad. More than likely is bad. So this debt repair is going up by considerably more. And you're only working on one side of the machine. It's worn out. If I looked at this at a business point, and it was me that was coming out of my pocket, I would take the $46,000 lease for 5 years. You got one new sweeper coming. You get the other one under Chapter 90. And I would rent a sweeper for the next, if it takes 2 months, I would rent the sweeper so that these streets are safe for our kids on their bicycles, the motorcycles, the cars that are out there. The safety of our constituents, or the citizens of Attleboro, is the utmost thing. We can have a discussion about how the equipment's going to be used, how it's not going to be used. I told him there the other night when he was in that you can't haphazardly spend Chapter 90 money. You have to get it all approved. As Mike said, you're going to have to inform the state that we're going to use that sweeper for road work in order to get Chapter 90 money to be able to be used. I think it's the right way to go. We've bought equipment before through Chapter 90, with Chapter 90 money. $46,000 out of $1.2 million every year for the next 5 years isn't earth-shaking. And it's a necessity. Our streets and getting that, I fought to get that lousy $20,000 sweeping done from Judy, I think. If my memory serves me correct, it goes back to the Robin administration. We put it down, it's our obligation to pick it up, and we ended up with a part of our snow removal budget. There was 20 grand put in there. You got to get this sand off the streets. That's foremost. The simplest and straightforward way of doing it, we got a sweeper on order. We get one under Chapter 90, and in the meantime, if this other one holds together long enough, we rent one, so now we get two on the street. One we don't have to worry about as far as repairs can go, it's a rental. That one breaks down, they give us another one, if I deem it right.
That's correct, Council.
And we get the streets swept. You know what we were all here for, to get the streets swept? And $46,000 a year is not gonna kill Chapter 90 money. And we've already spent $216. You sent in the order, right?
That's correct.
So why throw away 30 grand on a machine that more than likely will break down in 2 weeks? That's almost a year's lease payment. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you. Counselor Reynolds.
Okay, so I'm in agreement with both here, Councilor Blair and Councilor Cooper, but President Cooper. So I have a couple of questions here. Is there any way we can lease one for 5 years that's not Chapter 90 funds?
Well,
Would we have to use Chapter 90 funds? No.
I'm just not sure how a capital improvement thing works.
But I'm saying we could take it from another place in the budget. Leave the Chapter 90 for whatever the mayor had made his decision. Take a 5-year lease, which should still be $46,000. Which, when you look at it, we're going to spend $20,000 to repair something that's literally junk. So there's a month, $15,000 in 3 months, which is what it would take to kind of catch up where you are. You're at your $45,000, so there's your first year. I mean, you take the money from, I say that we don't take it from Chapter 90 funds, that we look at a 5-year lease. And so this year we'd be dropping the $216 to buy outright, and you'd be dropping, right, that's already done. That's what I mean, but that's already spent.
Yeah.
And then you would have the first year of a new lease, which would be $46,000. We're gonna spend $15,000 or $20,000 anyway, and you're talking about $15,000 a month, which now we're up to 2 months, $30,000. You've spent the first year's lease. Do you see what I'm saying, of the 5? So I believe, my own opinion is this, it is something we need. It's gonna come up again next year, based on how bad the equipment already is. So my feeling is that we should have a conversation with the finances that we have and see if we can come up with the $46,000 every year for the next 5 years and not take it out of Chapter 90 funds. That's what I'm suggesting.
Put it in the budget, that's fine.
And that's the end of my comments. That's
Thank
what
you
I
very
believe
much.
we should do.
Thank you. Counselor Delacio.
Thank you. It's a lot. So I guess my first question is, and it's more of a rhetorical, but how does a PO go missing? I think that's really where we need to pull back and look at that. But if it didn't go missing, Mike, would we have that street sweeper now?
Probably.
Or within
Yeah.
relatively close?
Probably.
So I guess, and the reason I bring this up is because now we're in a situation where we have to be reactive. And we're in a situation where are we throwing more good money after bad? And where I'm stuck is I don't know which is which right now. So I don't know what the good money is and what the bad money is, right? So we're gonna have to pay for this somehow, in some way. And my concern is if we're gonna be putting all this money into repairing what we have now, it reminds me of not too long ago where the DPW was actually a museum. You had dump trucks that had street signs welded to the floor. We had, trying to get the most, and that's really where your department has thrived, Mike. You talk about being thrifty, and you guys have done that. But we're in a situation now, because of that, we have to figure out we're shuffling right now. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle at this point. I agree with Sarah Lynn 100%. I think that we need to look at options for the leasing, because we need to. And I'm not sold in, with all due respect, the duct tape and bubble gum that we're hoping that we can keep Franken Sweeper alive. But I think we need to realistically look at the potential of renting for this year and where we can come up with a potential plan, because if we rent for this year, maybe for next year's budget, because I mean, let's be honest, the budget's coming down in 2 weeks. So, you know, I think we need to look at all options. I would support, until we get the new one in, renting at this point to get done what we need to get done. But we need to be able to come up with a plan. And, you know, I just looked, and Councilor Conti, correct me if I'm wrong, this is in the capital improvements plan, street sweeper 2.
But it's not in our resolution message.
You may.
And,
Thank you. I was asked a question.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
That was on my, again, through the chair to Mr. Conti, which tonight, maybe it's an opportunity we can discuss putting that in the resolution, a conversation for another time, I certainly understand. But we're in a situation now where we're reacting, and through really no fault of our own, but something has to be done.
Thank you. Councilor Conti.
Thank you. Michael, what does the city of Taunton use to sweep its streets?
What was that?
What does the city of Taunton use to sweep its streets?
Again, I'm sorry I didn't catch that.
What does the city of Taunton, Massachusetts use to sweep their streets?
The same type of apparatus.
Well, it doesn't look the same. Ours are made by Elgin, and they're big yellow things that look like a blob going down the street. What I see being used in Taunton is a dump truck that has a side sweeper, brush broom along the gutter, 2 men in the cab, and it's being sucked into the back of the truck after it's broomed. But there's a rotating broom at the curb. But it's not the type of sweeper that we use. So there's more than one type of sweeper. Taunton is using something else.
There is, but the primary one that almost all municipalities use is the Pelican, the elegant Pelican. Like I said, the one that you're referring to, Conti, is a vac sweeper. So it does have the gutter brooms on the side, but it doesn't really have a main broom. It has that sucks the stuff up off the road that way. I can tell you, Rehoboth, we didn't have those. We had Pelicans. They did have one in Seacock, and it just took a major beating. A lot of times they use those because they are self-contained. So they actually take those units. It's more of a truck than it is a sweeper, where now once it's filled up, they take that and they go dump somewhere out of that. Where when you're using a Pelican, you have a truck with it, where the sweeper keeps sweeping wherever it's going, and the truck takes the debris, and then the truck brings it out of there.
So what I'm getting at is that there's more than one way to sweep a street, correct?
There is.
So
there is.
This lease of $15,000 a month is for the same type of machinery that we currently own.
That's correct.
And this vendor that we would use at $30,000 a month, that they would also be using the same kind of sweeper, an Elgin sweeper.
That's correct.
But this alternative that Taunton is using appears to be less expensive. So is there an alternative to the $15,000 lease?
I don't think it's going to fit the needs of what we're using it for. I mean, the ones in Taunton, those sweepers are basically the same price as a Pelican. The only good side, if you will, is as I just stated, is that realistically, those are meant to have one person in. They do the sweeping. Once the body's filled, they bring it to a designated area and dump it, so you don't have to have another truck with that. So I think that's probably where they've seen the savings, not as far as the equipment itself. They're pretty well, matter of fact, there's more moving parts to the vac truck than there is to this type of sweeper, conventional. There's a lot more.
So let's change the discussion to the Chapter 90 funds being used for leasing a sweeper. You have in your office a three-ring binder. There was a consultant report on the street repair needs for the city of Attleboro. And in that report, I believe it was your predecessor who told me that the streets of Attleboro are decaying at a rate where we would need an additional $1.7 million a year on top of the $1.2 million Chapter 90 dollars that we receive in order to keep our streets as bad as they currently are. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we take $46,000 out of Chapter 90, we're just taking money away from improving our streets that are already not getting funded well enough to be able to be kept in their current condition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so for that reason, I'm against using Chapter 90 dollars to lease a sweeper, because I think we should use Chapter 90 dollars to fix our streets. And I think that even if we use every dollar, and I know the mayor was talking about using Chapter 90 money for putting in a sidewalk down Bishop Street, and that too would take away from repairing the potholes and the bad streets that we have, because it would be putting the money into sidewalks. So I'm guarding our streets carefully, because the average new car today costs $35,000 and is rolling down a road that's loaded with potholes and needs to be repaved. So I'm with Sarah Lynn Reynolds about the Chapter 90 money, because I believe that this, if it's a 5-year expenditure, it simply should become a budget in the DPW. $46,000 to lease a street sweeper, and we put it in the budget and approve the budget. I would be in favor of that. I'm not in favor of the $11,000 new gearbox and the $7,000 gutter broom assembly and the new tires and fixing an old piece of Frankenstein junk, because I think that's throwing money away. So my vote would be to go for the 5-year lease. My vote would be to hire a vendor to get the work done now, because the streets need to be clean for public safety. My vote would be to either, if we can't get a vendor, then to lease a couple of machines for a couple of months to clean the streets. But I would not vote to use Chapter 90 money for a 5-year lease. I believe that should be a budget amount. And I would not vote for right now for a $216,000 new purchase of a machine until we really knew and understood what those alternative street sweeping vehicles were. Right now, we're being told there's one street sweeper maker in America, and I don't believe it. I see other sweepers out there that are not looking like our sweepers. So something else is being used, and I wonder if it costs $216,000. So given with what I've known, I've told you how I would vote, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Council Parika.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. So if I may, as part of your committee, I think part of, and the reason that we're here tonight is there was a question on whether or not you wanted to make a motion to approve the funds that that are currently right there.
Correct.
As one of your chairpersons, part of your committee, I would maybe hold on to that. I think that there's some, we're vetting a situation that right now that we do not have a communication from the mayor on what the mayor would like, how he would like to spend the funds. I understand not moving on that because we don't want to approve that and then have it go to waste, and there are other options. So I would support just holding that in your committee for now.
Thank you, and that's why I did not bring the motion on the floor.
Sure.
Because I wanted us to have this kind of discussion so everybody knows exactly what's going on. But thank you very much.
And I just
that
think
is from hearing what I'm hearing this evening, and that is why Superintendent Tyler had spoken with me, because that was his concern. He was, you're throwing more money after bad, and he said, I'm a taxpayer too. And another person at DPW said the same thing. It's like, you know what, I don't know if it's going to work. Right. I just, we already know, and that was only like a few days ago, and now we already know that we have to throw another $7,000 into another one. It's like, hey, we're up to $21,000. So, yeah, so I agree with you, yes, but I just would like to let the conversation continue as well.
Sure.
To hear what everyone says. Go ahead.
I think it would be, our message to Mr. Tyler and to anyone who's been listening is pretty clear, and there are a variety of options for us. The money that we would be looking to spend would cover the 15, because there was a difference, correct me if I'm wrong, we can rent the machine for a month, it'll be about $15,000, and we man it. Or if we have them man it, it's another 30 grand. And then on top of that, we would have to extend the rental agreement on the sidewalk sweepers as well. So that the money that's potentially sitting in that committee to be approved would be able to address the current concern that we have, because we have a concern right now that's not going to be solved whether we order parts or buy a new one. We're going to have to do that anyway.
Correct.
So I think it would be appropriate for the message to the administration, send out an appropriation for us to be able to kick off the rental and be able to extend the rental on the other parts of it, and then have, again, however he feels that it is in the city's best interest for us to finance a new one, send that
Between
down
the
for
two of
us
them.
to, between the two of them. send that down for us to debate it then. They've heard what our recommendations are, and tailor make it around that.
Thank you. Council Holmes.
Thank you. I agree with what Councilor Delicio said. I really, I don't want to be reactive. I want us to figure out, what's going on. And if we're missing something here, or there's some kind of communication that's missing, we need to figure out, because I'm just being reminded of the Wilmarth Street, and just, I don't want to be reactive. It's costing the city more than being, proactive and trying to figure out how we can prevent situations like this. I'm open to all discussions, like Vice President Parika just mentioned, of however we want to finance this, but it sounds like the best option would be to purchase, so let's try to figure it out in the meantime. That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. Superintendent Tyler, is there a way that you can communicate back to the council how Franken Sweeper ends up working? Because,
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, when I made the comment about duct tape and bubble gum, that was meant as a compliment to your mechanics and the job that they're doing, especially, as you said, hoping to try to get the gutter broom on from one machine to another. It was a 2-day project, but they were able to get it done. So we have all the faith in you and your department, but if you could get us because I think we're all secretly hoping here that best case scenario is we can get 2 or 3 months out of this. So if you could just report back how that went, I think it would help to alleviate a lot of our fears.
Absolutely, Councilor Delicio. I'll let everybody know tomorrow in my email how we made out with that.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll have even better news about expediting the new sweeper.
And Councilor Delicio, I think you're going to hear pretty soon from your constituents before you need to hear from Superintendent Tyler.
Fair point.
You will. Councilor Hall.
Yes, I think this is great. I think we've listened to a lot of alternatives that have come here, and there's been a lot of viewpoints for something that, and I know you haven't brought the motion up yet, and I appreciate the fact, keep it in your committee, because it sounds like there's more. So I guess what I'm saying to Superintendent, if I might, on behalf of Ms. Jackson's committee, that if you could, give me all this information here, it's obviously that there's many more options. And if I've heard Councilor Parika right, those options need to be discussed with the administration. All of these options that were brought up here, and the administration needs to decide what the administration thinks is the best thing to do to send down to us as the option to vote on. So in my opinion, I think that's where we're at. I don't want to stop the conversation either, but I think we've kind of said everything we need to say about this in terms of, unless anybody's got other alternatives, I don't know. So that ends my...
I don't have any other alternatives, but Mike, I think it would be advantageous for you to get a hold of the mayor tomorrow and tell him what we think and how he would like to finance that other new sweeper, if that's his choice. And we have a meeting next week. We've made emergency motions before, and have him send it down one way or the other. If he doesn't want to put it in the budget, then send it down and tell us, or at least tell us, he's going to use Chapter 90 money. It's our recommendation, I believe as a whole, that we don't use Chapter 90 money, that we finance it ourselves, or lease purchase ourselves over the next 5 years. But I would charge you with that duty, as I may, to get that to the mayor so that we can keep our constituents safe and not run this thing around for 3 weeks and the streets not get swept. Thank you.
I just
They're not going to get swept for 3 weeks.
They
I mean,
will.
unless this machine works tomorrow, which we'll all keep our fingers crossed, at least
can
get a little bit going.
We can still rent one, Kate, to keep up with it.
I know, I understand that. I'm just saying to you, right now, we only have this one that we don't know what's going to happen day to day.
Right now, we're not doing our job.
Until we get our new one in. With regards to the new one coming in, yeah, it's going to be probably a few more weeks, right? Isn't that what we kind of figured?
Yeah.
We don't know for sure.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, okay. And then, yes, I agree, but we can also, if the mayor is not in agreement with any of this, then we as a council, when we discuss the budget, we put it in the budget. Bottom line is, we still have that option, so we'll just keep that open. Councilor Holmes.
I just have one quick question. If it sounds like there was 2 options. There was an A group that were getting it right away, and then we were placed in a B category or something like that. I'm just worried that if we do order a new one, what is the time frame to actually get this?
Well, that's a good point, because they do have schedules. You don't, so like I said, we missed the first one by not having that purchase order in hand. I would have to say the time of year would probably be 6 weeks.
Okay.
Probably 6 weeks.
Thank you.
Councilor Reynolds?
So, okay, just let me get this straight in my head. We already gave the 216, 265 for the new one. We're waiting on that. That's done. That's up in the air. If we were going to do a 5-year lease and tomorrow the mayor sent it down and said, sure, this is where we're going to get the money from, when would that one show up?
Yeah, it's a lease.
A 5-year lease?
Yeah. I would have to say probably 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, same
and that
thing.
And I just want to piggyback upon that a little bit. And I agree with Councilor Conti. I would be the first one to tell you we shouldn't be using Chapter 90 for
Yes.
capital expenditures.
Agreed.
Unless you're in a position where you don't have the funds on hand and that's your only funding source. That's exactly why I put it that way, because I know the city is in financial, I don't know the right word, but we're not in the best shape anyways, you know what I mean? We're trying the best we can. So that's the only reason I put that alternative up there. In turnaround in Chapter 90, I hate to tell you, it's a lot faster than the turnaround.
Okay. You mean you
Once
think
I
you'd
put the
get it?
paperwork in for the Chapter 90, once I got the approval for that, I mean, now you're talking the next day the order goes in. It's not.
So let me follow up if I might, Council.
Of course.
So if we ordered through Chapter 90, can you then put the funds back into Chapter 90?
No,
Don't think you
I
can.
don't, that's what I would want to know, is if you took it out so we could get it like quickly, can you put the funds back? No. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Dolan?
So if we didn't use Chapter 90 funds, we wouldn't have any restrictions on what we did with the sweeper.
we wouldn't. It's just, you have to be very careful when you put into Chapter 90 that you're not putting in the paperwork that you're using it for a maintenance purpose, because
No,
they,
well, if we don't use Chapter 90,
oh, they
we
make
have, no,
like anything else.
would this figure remain the same for leasing?
Yes.
Regardless of where we get the money from?
That's all
Chapter
through the
90 or not?
NJPA contract, I believe, the National Joint Powers Association. So that wouldn't change no matter what type of funding source it was.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
Councilor Kurbis?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, thanks for coming in, and I definitely appreciate you setting expectations appropriately regarding that $20,000. With that said, can you confirm, I think you said the sweeper we've already purchased is expected in around the end of May? So if Franken Sweeper doesn't work out, we're looking to rent for maybe 1 month, potentially 2, is that
That's
accurate?
correct. That's correct. I'd say 1 month, but I do want to say that we've been pushing on CN Wood to get us to the top of that list. So the worst case scenario we were told is May. I don't want anybody to say that that was the best case scenario.
Okay.
That was the worst case scenario they told us, was the end of May.
And then, is there a benefit to buying 2 new sweepers the same year so that the parts are all the same? Or is it, in my mind, I'm still not convinced that it's best to buy 2 new ones now. It'd be better to stagger them so that down the road when they break, they break at different times. But is there a benefit to buying at the same time?
No, just that you're going to have the newer machinery. There's no financial benefit, I would have to say, in my opinion.
I was just thinking with the parts
I think
being
the problem is
interchangeable.
how we got here. These stopgap measures of buying used sweepers that nobody wanted in the first place for whatever reason, and then us investing $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000 to get them up to par to go out on the road. What happened in that time frame? It was only supposed to last 2 years. How do we get to 2018? That's, in my mindset, that's what I'm looking at, and almost like what Councilor Conti was adding to. I can get you other options on different type of sweeping units, but I will be the first to say this: I've been in construction my whole life, and I can't tell you how many municipalities, when JCB was supposed to be this big thing, that they went and bought these JCBs instead of buying John Deere or Cat backhoes and loaders, and they're kicking themselves in the butt every day because those machines are in no way prepared to do the type of work that they have to perform on the municipal side or in the heavy construction side. And again, you get what you pay for, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, Councilor Conti, but all I could think of is when you said that is JCBs That's good if you got it in the park and you're just moving a couple limbs here and there, moving a little bit of mulch, kind of like a one step over a homeowner. But when you're doing actual heavy construction, sweeping and loading, whatever, that's why you see John Deere and Caterpillar. Those are the brands you buy. You pay more, but you get what you pay for.
And I'm open to whatever options the administration and yourself recommend, but I haven't written off the idea of applying a couple Band-Aids to the 0405 for 20,000 and potentially getting another 2 or 3 years out of that, if that's a viable option.
And I think, if you don't mind, I think the ultimate goal for Public Works is to have 2 working street sweepers. Because, I mean, think about it. They really do eat dirt for a living, and that's, you know, pretty gritty and nasty, and that's what it does. So it's going to take a beating. We've been very fortunate that we've had these 3 used ones, and they have been able to work because we have good mechanics over there. But they've been able to work with those used ones, and now we just wants to make sure that we still have 2. I mean, our constituents expect it from us, so we expect nothing less. When they snow plow, you know, we expect to have our streets plowed right away, and they do. And they're expecting now that our streets are swept. So that is why Superintendent Tyler had come before us this evening, because he said, hey, Kate, you know what, $11,000, and now I got this one broken, and then the third. So it just kind of monopolized. So that's when I just said, come here, because I don't know, it's a lot of money to just throw in, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think I will let you, Mr. Conti, and I think we're done with this.
Yeah, I just want to address the JCB issue that I was attending a mayor's administration meeting this month when the state auditor was talking about how we all do more with less. And I thought about Attleboro doing more with less, and we have been doing more with less. And your department in particular has been doing more with less. And the 8 years that I've been on the council, I've seen your department perform stellar with level funding, and it amazes me that while the needs grow, the dollars don't grow. You do more with less. But after doing more with less, sometimes you get to the point where you have to do less with less, and that's where the decision of buying that $216,000 sweeper or less expensive sweeper, because the $216,000 isn't there. So, you know, it's nice to do more with less, but sometimes you get to the point where you have to do less with less. And our budget is very tight, and we haven't seen it yet, but I already know it's not going to be pretty. And $216,000 is a lot of money. And already Taunton has come up with a way where they're not using the big Elgin sweepers. They've decided to do something else. And maybe other communities have also decided to do something else. And we don't know what that equation is for longevity and usage and initial costs and repair costs and life of the machine. We're counselors, we don't know all that. But that is available to you. So the only reason why I bring it up is because there are alternatives. There's not just one way to sweep a street. And I think that we need to be looking at the other alternatives as well. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other discussion this evening on street sweepers?
No.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Michael Tyler, for coming in and standing with us for the last hour and giving us your explanation of what's going on. We really do appreciate it, and I am going to hold this motion until we can come up with, or maybe the mayor, after you speak with the mayor, will send down a motion, and we'll see where we go from there. If not, between the 11 of us, I think we got you back.
Thank you very much, and I'll let you know how we make out tomorrow.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Well, thanks for the healthy discussion. I'd like to call the Public Works meeting to adjourn at 8:12. Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:12.
Back to you. Licenses Committee has no business this evening.
Yes, and tomorrow.
Good evening, everyone. Reporting for budget and appropriations. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 8:12. I have a couple updates and one motion, so let's do the motion first. Sitting on my committee are Councilors Kobus and Conti. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request from the mayor regarding the need for funds to pay the heating bills at the animal shelter for the remainder of fiscal year 2018. Therefore, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to transfer $1,000 from account 1124100-578300 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1292100-521010 Animal Control Heating. Upon transfer, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer will be $158,002.04.
Second.
Councilor Conti just beat you out on that one. This is pretty straightforward. I did have the opportunity to speak with Derek Corsi today. Long and short, we had a colder than average March and April. And Derek feels that this will be enough for the last 2 months of the fiscal year. He essentially took the average of what they've paid and this number. Chances are, in my estimation, they're probably not going to use all of it, but I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it and not have it. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. The second motion is a little, well, I called for a meeting next Tuesday at 6:30. So for this one's a little more complicated and a little convoluted. I want to give some background. This has to do, if you remember, the vote we took on February 21st, we approved $170,000 in appropriation for phase 2 of the rehabilitation of the HVAC at the Russell F. Tennant Building. And then we also approved on February 15th the loan order for $3,200,000 in order to fund the remaining phases of the HVAC rehabilitation. So essentially, that $170,000 can only be used for phase 2. So there was a memo sent down by the mayor, and I think it's the right one to send down, that we could be in a situation where we could combine all of the appropriations for that project into one loan order. Of course, we can't just go simply amending a loan order. But what that will do is it'll give us a little bit more flexibility from a fiscal side to get more of the project done. Could actually end up saving us money in the long run on the project. So what I asked is for Deb Gould, our city auditor, to join us next Tuesday at 6:30, so she can really kind of answer the questions a little bit more in depth, talk about the history, how we got here, a little bit more about what we can and can't do. But it was important to at least get the conversation started tonight, understanding what my conversation was with the auditor around this, and just being able to move forward and see if we can save a couple bucks here and there. You know, because with phase 2 and that $170,000, we're tied in. We're very, very much boxed into what we can use those funds for. By combining it, it takes some of the chains off, so we can really kind of have more flexibility. So it's a more fiscally responsible move, but I think that Deb would be able to just add a little more and answer any questions that might come up. So that's where we are on that one. All right, and finally, I just want to give it a quick update. I've been working with and speaking quite frequently with Budget Director Barry Lacasse, and the plan is now for a May 8th presentation of the budget. So I sent a timeline of what I would like to have happen to President Cooper as well as Vice President Parika. And I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. You know, it's been a long term already in terms of meetings and things that we usually don't see. And in the past, it's been common practice to have, you know, 3, sometimes 4 nights of budget hearings. So we're already here on Tuesday nights. So what I'm going to be looking to do is do as many of the budget hearings and meetings as we can on Tuesday nights. So early on, leading into our committee meetings and our regular meetings. The other thing that I've spoken with Barry about, and Deb and Laura, and I'll speak with Stan too, is if we get that budget on the 8th, I'd like to have that Saturday the 12th to have kind of that budget boot camp almost, where we have our financial team come down and work with us and really talk a little bit about what their role is in the budget process, what our role is in the budget process. Municipal budgets are very cumbersome. There's a lot that goes into it. And, we heard tonight, I think this was a great dialogue tonight about potentially how do we as councilors try to work something into the budget that we think that we might benefit from. And of course, we can only suggest cuts. But in our budget message, we could say, you know what, we've cut here, because if we cut, and we want something else, where does it come from? So there's a action and a reaction. One thing I'm going to really stress again is in the past, we've been in situations where we've made hasty cuts on the floor with the budget on the night that we passed the budget. So we'll have the department heads in front of us. That's our opportunity. Let's ask those questions. If something happens like, oh man, I wish I asked this, send it through Virginia to me. I can get that answer. The other thing is how I came up with this timeline is I started from when we were getting the budget delivered, and I backed in from that 45 days to ensure that we have enough time. What I would ultimately like to do is have the public hearing scheduled for May 29th. And again, this is all loose right now, but and then what I would like to do on the May 30th meeting, call for a special meeting on May 30th, where we can read the budget into the record after the public hearing. And then that gives us enough time to deal with anything that may come up one way or another. Ultimately, I'd like to have the budget voted on by June 12th in case there's anything that might come up in these situations as well. And that gives us about 10 days or so before the June 22nd mark, which is that 45-day. So, again, I do appreciate the mayor and Barry working with me and getting me this timeline, but I just wanted to communicate this to you folks so you have an idea. Any thoughts, questions, concerns on that?
Awesome.
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:19. Thank you, Councilor Conti, and all those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 8:19. Thank you.
It's okay with you, Clovis. I'm going next, okay? I'll just be very brief. I call the committee meeting for traffic and transportation to order at 8:20. Just a quick update. Those on my committee are Councilor Conti and Councilor Reynolds. I don't have any motions this evening, but I did want to give you a little bit of an update. Any of the new business that's come in has been referred to the Traffic Study Commission. Some of the items were tabled. We'll get to it next week sometime. I just wanted to talk about Bugle Club Road a little bit. I did have the mayor, myself, the residents had a meeting a couple weeks back on a Wednesday. There were 3 potential parking. We're not calling it a parking lot, but it's like a structure. I'll use the term structure. 3 options. They were presented to Nick Wiley, our conservation agent, presented them to the Conservation Commission to see which they would be most inclined to vote in the affirmative of in the event. So that he got their feelings, kind of like what we just did with Mike. What would be the best way to do this? Then that it was phased. It's plot number 3. It's you can use 10% of the rivershed, and it's beyond the gate, and we would have to put in 2 new gates, and there's a whole bunch of other things that would go along with all of that. We did have a meeting with the residents of the neighborhood, and they were comfortable with that. Just as a side note, the seasonal parking restriction that we have down there right now with the new and updated signage is working beautifully. There has been, there's a couple of cars that are parking illegally. Eddie Perica and my son went down there this weekend. It was beautiful. There were 4 cars. Everyone was parked in the manner in which they were supposed to park. So the current signage and what is in place right now is actually working out quite well. So any panic over it being pandemonium down in that location at this current time is not the case. And people are enjoying it. They're getting to utilize passive recreation. The meeting went quite well with the residents. They had some concerns. There were some tentative tree measurement markings in the area by which the proposed parking lot would be. When the residents went out there and re-measured certain things, it wasn't lining up necessarily with what the information that was coming across. what they needed to understand, and we explained to them. I asked Nick, the mayor, myself, a couple of the residents. We had a site visit last week. I got to wear my bean boots. I got to stand in the water. I was taking measurements with Nick. It was quite interactive. And you know, there was a small amount of tweaking that took place, so they were comfortable with where the location is. The mayor said that he would be interested in potentially putting in some arborvitae or things like that to help reinforce that location and make it visually more appealing. We have there is a long list of things that have to happen prior to the administration bringing this down. So I just want everyone, you guys, people at home, to have a reasonable expectation of a time frame with regards to this. An actual drawing and measurements need to be created. That needs to be submitted to the state for Natural Heritage. They have 30 days to respond to us, to respond to the Conservation Commission. That plan then needs to be presented to the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission can either approve it or deny it. Then it gets kicked back up to the administration before it even comes down to the municipal council. What the administration has to send down as a motion includes not only the parking structure, the cost, how many gates, where it's going to be, all of that kind of stuff. In addition to that, he is also discussing, part of the plan is to have it be resident parking only on the entire street and a parking pass program for the parking structure. Those things, I have made the recommendation and suggested to the administration that it would be appropriate to get a city solicitor opinion on whether or not those things are legal in our location, because we have a city solicitor opinion from a long time ago that is in opposition to saying that we can do those kinds of things. So I think it would be appropriate to make sure that's all buttoned up. So all of that in its totality needs to come to the municipal council before we can, I'm giving you the updates, but I have no motion in front of us, nothing. So I just want expectations of my fellow councilors and the people at home to understand that there is like 21 steps we have to get through before it comes down to the mayor's communication. In the event that it comes down in the mayor's communication without all the bits and pieces to it, I would have the expectation it would be referred back to the administration to make sure that all the bits and pieces are put in together. The other part of it too is that when it does come down, it would need to be voted in the affirmative in its totality to be effective. The municipal council would have to be in support of resident parking only, the parking pass program for the 7 spots, 1 handicap spot on the parking structure. It would have to be voted in the affirmative in its totality. Those are what the expectations are for as we move forward. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So anyone who has the hope and expectation that it'll happen prior to the June 1st parking restriction, parking ban that goes into effect down there, I can't even imagine that it would even come close to that. So I'm happy to try and answer any questions that people have with regards to this. Mr. Conti.
Can I conclude your comments to say that there will someday be a parking lot at the end of Beagle Club Road?
Well, it would, again, that's the goal. We, as a municipal council, we have to also, the other part too, thank you very much for, we've come up with the language, time restrictions, things like that, what the signage would be, all of those things, that's up to the municipal council to make those recommendations. I would have to say, depending on, in the location that we would have to have it, we either need we would need 2 new gates or 2 giant sets of boulders and another gate. There will be a cost. So the discussion has been, it'll be like $10,000. We throw down some pea stone and put up a couple telephone poles and we're good to go. That's not actually the case. There will be a cost to it. So I don't know what the cost threshold is for approval for the municipal council. In addition to that, if we can't have resident parking only at that location and have the parking program in part, as part of all of that, we would have to go back to the drawing board on that. Mr. Conti.
So what barriers need to be overcome in order for us to get to a drawing plan stage?
That's up to that's between the administration and the Conservation Commission. It'd be up to Nick. Him and Gary have to put the drawing together and then submit that to the Conservation Commission, and then send it, after their approval, send it to the state for national heritage to ensure that we're not building on salamanders or beetles of some special kind or something like that. And they have 30 days to respond. So that's the next step that we're at. Anything else? Anyone else? Excellent. I call for an adjournment at 8:28.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned at 8:28. It's your turn now. You're so excited because it's been so long. You missed last week. It's like you haven't been here at all.
I call the Zoning and Land Use Committee to order at 8:28. The committee, myself, Councilor Hall, Councilor Delicio. We have one motion to take care of tonight and then a quick update. So from the docket of November 21st, 2017, I move to amend section 17-10.15 registered marijuana dispensary uses. And I'll read the full amendment here, so bear with me for 1 second. Amend 17-10.15 registered marijuana dispensary uses by deleting subsection B2D in its entirety and re-alphabetize accordingly. And amend 17-10.15 registered marijuana dispensary uses by deleting subsection D1A through D1F in its entirety and insert thereof the following. 1. No portion of any building containing a registered marijuana dispensary use shall be located within 500 feet of any residential zoning district. 2. No portion of any building containing a registered marijuana dispensary use shall be located within the following designated areas. The distance between any building containing a registered marijuana dispensary use and the uses cited below is established as follows. Said distance shall be measured in a straight line without regard for intervening structures or natural features from the closest point of any registered marijuana dispensary building in which a registered marijuana dispensary is located or is to be located to the nearest point of a lot line containing the following use. 500 feet of a principal residential use, 500 feet of a public or private school, 500 feet of a registered daycare center, family daycare home, and group daycare home, 500 feet from any public park, recreational area, or facility in which children commonly congregate.
Second.
All right. So this is the item we've been talking about for a while now, where we're cleaning up the medical marijuana dispensary ordinance issues, and I had sent out the study looking at the distances and the 500 feet throughout the city. That was 2 weeks ago now. And we now have the ruling from the planning board, and I'll read that ruling real quick. It says, it's from April 9th, 2018. Dear Council President and Councilors, this is to certify that at the Planning Board meeting held on Monday, April 2nd, 2018, the Planning Board voted unanimously in the affirmative, 8 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, to recommend to the Municipal Council to adopt the proposed amendments to 17-10.15 registered marijuana dispensary uses, subsection B2D in D1A through D1F of the zoning ordinance as contained in the legal advertisement for the joint public hearing held on March 20th, 2018. So I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, we do, and it's good to be here at this point. Now, one thing, if memory serves, and I think it's more housekeeping, but didn't we discuss having it with 100 feet of any residential?
Would you like to make an amendment? So originally it was 100 feet. We had moved it to 500 feet, and then upon doing that study, it looks like 500 feet would be incredibly restrictive. So if you would like to make that amendment,
Yeah.
be open to that.
Yeah, make a friendly amendment to change the 500 to any residential zoning district and principal residential use, so in...
Just a point of order, it would have to be a motion to amend. It can't be a friendly amendment, and you'd have to
Okay.
make a motion to
So-
amend, because,
Yeah,
sorry.
no
Well,
worries.
just, it has to go along with the public hearing that we
Right,
had, so.
so I would move to amend the motion, so it says no portion of any building containing registered marijuana dispensary use shall be located within 100 feet of any residential zoning district. And then, so we'll be two different.
You'll need a second for that.
Second.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, motion's in order. Let's vote on that.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion's in order. Motion passes, so that's
Point
100.
of order.
Sorry.
So in between your, after your second, just ask, is there any comment? Because you didn't give any
Right.
members of your committee nor anybody else the opportunity to make comments about your proposed amendment, that's all.
Do you want us to go back and have that comment period and then vote again, or is it too late?
Unfortunately, you are, did you declare the motion, did you say motion passes?
Motion, I did. Motion passed.
Then you pass the motion, but you should, someone
the next
else,
one we will.
yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so the second one would be in 17-10.15 to A. I would move to amend 500, amend where it says 500 feet of a principal residential use to 100 feet of a principal residential use.
I'll second that.
Motion's in order. Any comments?
No?
Counselor Hall, Counselor Delicio, and myself.
Yep.
Then the second should come from yourself. Did you second?
She
I did second.
She did second.
Okay.
And I have no comments.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. All right, so back to the main motion. Do we have any further comments on this? I think we've talked quite a bit. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. All right. Good to finally have that done. So the second item, I know, and this is just an update, I know I had promised that I would have the draft ordinance for recreational marijuana establishments sent out before I left on vacation. Still hasn't happened, and I'll just, I have a couple more updates to make to that before I send it out, and just to give you guys an update, the things that I'm looking at and working on is, I was looking, we added transportation-only licenses to it, and I was looking to see if there was an option for us to require that if there's a transportation-only license, that they register the vehicles in Attleboro such that the excise taxes would be paid to the city. Ultimately, I'm not going to do anything with that because that can be handled with the host agreement. But that was something that I was trying to explore. Also, we had some wording in there for requiring the companies to have liability insurance, and it spelled out what type of insurance they require. That's spelled out explicitly in the state regulations now, so I'm going to remove that. And then the final item, we had a list of requirements that each of these establishments were required to provide to us, including details on their security procedures. And I don't want to remove that because I think that's incredibly important for the police chief to be able to make a decision and give us guidance. But I want to add some wording in there to make sure that that remains confidential. It isn't added to the public record. And so I found that wording and I'll add that in there. And so those are the couple items that I'm working through, and that's why the delay has been there. Go ahead, Councilor
I
Delicio.
appreciate protecting the privacy and the confidentiality. However, would the wording make it so it's available to the municipal council should we so desire?
Yes, the intent is for it to be available to the municipal council, but not for the public record.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that? All right. And then the last item I have is just a public information announcement. There are 3 meetings coming up over the next 7 days. These are not meetings that are associated with us. They're public information meetings by a number of these marijuana establishments that are looking to set up business in Attleboro, and I'll just read off when those meetings are. And again, these aren't associated with the municipal council. These are meetings being held by the individual companies. So the first meeting is tomorrow at 6 p.m. by the Leonard J. Irving Center, and that will be at the Florence Hayward Suite Club at 44 Peck Street at 6 p.m. This second meeting is from Beacon Compassion Center, and that will be on Thursday evening at 6:30 p.m. at the Elks Lodge at 887 South Main Street in Attleboro. And that's where they'll discuss, I'll read this. In this meeting, we will discuss security, diversion prevention, community involvement, and planning and general operating information for their proposed facility. They will, in each of these meetings, will also provide an opportunity for Q&A. And then the third meeting that's coming up is on Monday, April 30th at 7 p.m. at the Elks Lodge, and that's for the BCBW establishment. Yes.
I think that one was moved.
Yeah, from Thursday to Monday.
I think
Which
that
one?
BCWC was moved.
To Monday, April 30th.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yep.
what he just said. The other one was on Thursday, Beacon.
Beacon is on. So
I feel like.
Leonard J. Irving
I
is.
feel like one got moved to May. May, can I look? May. I feel like one of those got moved to like May 5th. I don't have the paperwork with me. No, May 5th would be a Saturday. I feel like one of them, all right, I'm sorry, maybe I'm lying, but I feel like it got
That's
away.
possible. So
I'll get that information to you when I get home.
if it's changed, sure. And again, these meetings are not associated with us. These are meetings, public meetings being held by the different entities. President Cooper.
So I too was having a hard time keeping track of it,
Right, so
especially since I got copies at home, 2 copies sent here. I lost track of what I was reading, but the one that was changed was BCWC. It was changed from April 25th. They rescheduled to April 30th, and that's in a communication that came to me dated April 20th from BCWC, 34 Extension Street in Attleboro. So they moved it from the 24th to the 30th. I don't recall anybody else moving it.
So, and
I
that's
haven't been
the one
notified.
that we had talked about is for Monday. So everything's right. There's one tomorrow, one on Thursday, and another one on Monday. So I don't have any comments on that. All right, with that, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Zoning and Land Use Committee is adjourned at 8:41.
Quite a book out there.
I'd like to call the Capital Improvement City Development order at 8:41. Sitting on this committee is Councilor Dolan and Councilor Hall. I have one motion and actually I have 2 motions and a discussion for this evening. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding the need for funds to provide a 7% construction contingency for Phase 1A construction of the Dodgeville Pond Dam renovation project. Therefore, The mayor hereby requests your honorable body to transfer $15,865 from account 1241000-578300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 1124100059900 citywide other finances uses to fund 2313 Dodgeville Pond Dam rehab. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer will be $131,058.09.
Second.
Thank you. This is complicated, so I'd like to recap why we need the 7% contingency. The EOEEA, which is a state agency, has given the city of Attleboro $875,500 to repair the Dodgeville Dam. They did that in 3 phases. The initial grant was $125,500 for the design work. Then they gave us a second grant award of $250,000, of which we had to match 25%, so we had to throw in $62,500. And then the third grant that they've given us is for $500,000 to implement the construction of Phase 1B, which we have not yet started work on. And Mr. Rajan will be appearing before the council on May 1st to go through the whole program. So what the mayor is asking us for right now, and he needs it right now, is a 7% contingency fund on that first Phase 1A. Am I right? Phase 1A? Mm-hmm. He doesn't say. He doesn't. Yes, Phase 1A. Mm-hmm. So Phase 1A was that initial grant of $125,500. Every construction program always has a contingency plan. 7% is considered pretty low. The last one we just did, the wastewater, was 25%. So I highly recommend the passage of this, and the motion's in order and seconded. Is there any comments? Yes.
I would say, and you hit on a good point, the fact that it's 7% shows the vote of confidence that the city has in the contractor and the project by EOEA. So I'm in full agreement with this, Councilor. I think that with the contingency is low, we've used these folks in the past. I think it's a must pass.
Good. Any other comments? Motion's in order. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So, on the on that Dodgeville Dam renovation project, I'm just going to let it sit because I'm going to let Gary handle everything on May 1st. He's the authority, and I trust he's going to cover everything. He asked how much time we would give him, and I told him how long is a piece of string, cover all the bases, get everything done so that we don't have any questions. The community development block grant entitlement budget is moving along nicely. We're just waiting for time to pass to get that done. And the last item I want to discuss with you tonight is the resolution from the municipal council for the mayor. So the charter says, and I'm just going to read through this because it has to be read into the record. I entertain a motion to adopt the following resolution and the following priority items submitted by the mayor as part of the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2019-2023. Resolution, City of Attleboro Capital Improvement Program, fiscal years 2019-2023. Whereas the Home Rule Charter, approved by the people of Attleboro in November 1973, requires a yearly adoption by resolution of at least 5-year capital improvement program for the city, and whereas planning for capital improvements is a necessary part of a successful municipal fiscal management, and whereas the city's capital improvement have continued to depreciate and deteriorate logarithmically, and whereas a capital improvement program each year requires the city's future projects to be regularly reevaluated and updated in response to changing needs and conditions, and whereas this capital improvement program has nearly $19 million in urgent and priority one requested projects, all of which cannot be funded in one fiscal year. Therefore, the council makes the following suggestions and recommendations regarding capital improvement program for 2019-2023. Narrative on the capital improvements program fiscal years 2019-2023. The capital Improvements Program for fiscal years 2019-2023, submitted by Mayor Paul Heroux, outlines capital projects, noting that several projects require multi-year implementation schedules. To implement these projects, a variety of funding sources would be needed, including municipal financing, trust funds, and state and federal government sources. To obtain a better understanding of the proposed projects, the Capital Improvement and City Development Committee conducted a series of on-site visits with the requesting departments. As part of this process, a public hearing was also held on April 17, 2018. The Capital Improvements and City Development Committee then again met to review the information received and develop the following recommendations and comments. Criteria: to continue the efforts designed to provide financial stability to the city, 2 criteria were employed in selecting and prioritizing the proposed programs. Number 1, programs that, if not implemented, could, in the short term, result in negative financial and public safety consequences to the city. 2, programs that will benefit the largest segment of the city's population. Recommendations and comments. In conjunction with the analysis of the proposed programs and discussions with city officials, the Municipal Council presents the following recommendations and comments on a department or citywide basis. In the Administration Department, the Sanford Street Parking Garage Phase 1 is $200,000. Management Information Systems Department, 30 new computers are $16,500. In the Fire Department, to replace protective equipment, $50,000, replace pressure ventilation, fans and smoke ejectors, $16,000, replace fit testing equipment, $12,000, replace the 2001 F-350 pickup, $57,750, the command vehicle replacement, $47,250, turnout gear, $45,000, HVAC for the South Attleboro Station, $25,000, and HVAC repair at headquarters, $50,000. The Health Department, a 2006 Dodge Caravan replacement for $28,310. Library, building exterior renovation, $1.25 million. The Mayor's Office, to renovate the Academy Building Phase 1, $78,850. Department of Parks and Forestry, the Wolfenden Fountain repairs, $65,000. The Maintenance, Building, Design, and Construction, $1 million. F1 pickup replacement, $26,941. The Zoo, to renovate the main building Phase 1 exterior, $80,000. Renovate the main building Phase 2 roof, which is the roof, $170,000. And renovate the main building Phase 3, the HVAC system, for $50,000. And the Animal Hospital HVAC system, $55,000. The Police Department, bullet-resistant vest, $13,000. Architectural expansion, $12,000. Fingerprint machine, $37,956.23. The early warning system software, $27,000. The cruiser and body cameras, $177,000. Motorcycle replacement, $28,000. Department of Public Works, road repair, Chapter 90 supplement, a $1.7 million line item. The Handy Street Culvert Phase 2, $175,000. The Forest Street Drainage, $50,000. NPDES Part 2, $50,000. The backhoe, $180,000. A hot mix truck, $155,000. An H-24 dump truck replacement, $130,000. H-25 dump truck 1993 replacement, $155,000. 1996 John Deere loader replacement, $255,000. H-18 dump truck 1998 replacement, $70,000. H-27 dump truck 1998 replacement, $71,000. H-23 dump truck 1997 replacement, $71,000. The Recreation Department, Bartech gutter repair, $18,207. Veterans Memorial Park and South Attleboro irrigation, $50,000. South Attleboro Veterans Pool, Phase 1, $100,000. Twin Village Pool, Phase 1, $15,000. Spatcher Roof Repair, $25,000. Ponset Hewlett Well Connection, $40,000. 2003 Ranger Replacement, $51,000. In the School Department, Hill Roberts HVAC, $140,000. That's Hill Roberts Parking Lot Repair, $40,000. Hill Roberts Mondo Gym Floor, $75,000. Hyman Fine HVAC, $140,000. Hyman Fine Repair Parking Lot, $100,000. Hyman Fine Mondo Gym Floor, $75,000. Studley Roof Repair, $55,000. Studley Fire Suppression, $220,000. Thatcher Parking Lot, $40,000. Cal wall replacement, $600,000. Brennan roof repair, $500,000. Wamsutta roof repair, $500,000. And the Enterprise Water Department to rebuild the sludge gravity thickener, $222,000. The lift pump gate valves, $57,000. Sludge landfill phase 2 with $2.9 million. The SCADA system, $94,000. A mower, $69,163. Lift station generator, $20,758. A infusion and inflow baseline monitoring program, $350,000. Transit van, $33,137. Replace the 2006 E150 van. $42,345. Replace the 2004 F-150 pickup, $37,660. And in the Enterprise Water Department, the I-95 main repair at $334,000. The Wading River boiler, $24,483. The Pawtucket interconnection, $1.4 million. The Manchester that should be dam and expansion, $836,800. The Water Department plant HVAC, $792,000. The chlorine tank overfill, $98,000. And the distribution rehabilitation, $2 million. The recommended funding, the following items are included in the council recommendation for funding. Items to be completed in 1 year. Management information systems at $16,500. The fire department at $340,000. Parks and forestry at $27,000. Police department at $300,000. Health department at $26,310. The public works department at $1 million, and recreation at $51,000 for a total urgent short-term note funding of $1.77 million. Long life return items to replace that would give us a longer life. Administration, $200,000. The library, $1.25 million. The mayor's office, $78,850. Parks and forestry, $1.5 million. Public works, $2 million. Recreation, $250,000. School, $2.5 million. So the total urgent long-term funding is $8.25 million. The total urgent citywide funding, rounded, is $10 million. In the enterprise system, items to complete in 1 year in the wastewater is $175,000, in the water department $792,000, so the total short-term urgent note funding is $967,000. The long life return in wastewater is $3.7 million, the water department $3.7 million, so the total long-term funding is $7.4 million, and the total urgent enterprise funding is $8.4 million. In summation, the council is of the opinion that nearly $19 million in urgent capital improvement program items could be less formidable if we were to fund at least 1/2 in fiscal year 2019. The council foresees this as a first step contingent upon favorable economic factors to be implemented in coming years to ensure progress towards completion of outstanding programs. The establishment of such a policy will result in the timely replacement of vehicles and equipment and minimize deferred maintenance. It is the goal of this council to have a more sophisticated program in which capital improvement program funding requests are coupled with a fiscal policy. There's a motion.
Second.
Thank you. So, councilors, I've circulated this to you for study and recommendation. What I've done is I've taken this giant book, visited the departments, distilled it down into a little outline, which basically only takes the urgent items and the attached priority 1 items and listed them individually. And then after listing all those $19 million worth of urgent items, split them into short-term and long-term urgent needs. And it still looks bad at $18.4 million. But I've also circulated to both councilors in my committee a document from the Treasurer's Office on borrowing, which I had to read 3 times. But after reading 3 times, I really, for the first time, fully understand the bonding process. And I did have some conversations with Laura Gignac as well. So, as we all know, city council's don't get to spend money. We just get to approve money that's being asked us to spend. So for the people at home, I want to explain that what the purpose of the capital improvement resolution is to send a message from the council up to the administration of what we're thinking, so that the administration can plan in their budget process, and this is the way it's supposed to work. Capital improvement plan is supposed to be done before the budget, so that the capital improvement plan can send this message to the mayor before he sends the budget down to the budget committee. Because if we're saying in our resolution that we think that when you've got $19 million of urgent issues in the city that need to be paid attention to, we look at a $10 million bond, we know the interest rate coming from the treasurer is 2%, we know that cost is $20,000 over the course of a one-year note, and I don't think it's possible for this city with its resources to expend $10 million in capital improvements in 1 year. It's just not possible. So in the water department, the wastewater department, we have CDM, we have outside vendors getting a lot of the work done, we got Mass DEP doing the I-95. It's a little bit different in the water wastewater department because all of the work that they do, they contract out to vendors. That's not the case in the rest of the school department alone. If the school department were to get all the funding for Hill Roberts, Hyman Fine, Studley, Thatcher, and Brennan and Wamsutta, in 1 year, I question whether or not we could physically get that work done. So what I want to send to the administration is a message is that we see a big need. We know we can't do it all. Let's try to tackle half of it. If we can't tackle half of it, let's tackle as much of half of it as we can. But at the worst case scenario, it's going to cost us $20,000 in interest. So if we went out and got a 1 year $10 million bond, and it did cost us $20,000, that's less than the repairs to the sweeper. And in $10 million, $20,000 doesn't sound like much at all. The problem is that you've got to pay back that $10 million. And where's that money coming from? So these are tax.
I was like, it's not like we get the $10 million for free and we're just paying the $20,000. Like, we still have to come up with $10 million.
And so that's called a tax anticipated note, TAN. So the bonding anticipation note is where you bond the note and you borrow the money knowing that the taxes are coming in to pay the payments in the future. Payments are made twice a year. So it's why this has to be done before the budget's done, so that the mayor and the administration can look at, okay, the council sent us a message saying $10 million tax anticipated note. We can't afford a $10 million tax anticipated note. I know we can't. You know we can't. But there is a number that we can afford. There is a number there, and it's probably somewhere around $2, $3, or $4 million that we could get done this year. But I don't want to be the one to say yes and no and yes and no and yes and no and yes and no. My position as a chairman of the committee was to let's take a look at the urgent items and let's acknowledge them and let's slice and dice them so we know what we're up against, and let's let the administration know that we're ready and willing and we understand that things need to be done, like the library. We didn't think it was going to be 1.25 million, but it is. And that could be its own bond. You know, the library could be its own bond. There's a couple of other things here that can be their own bond. Certainly the wastewater, 3.7 million, that can be its own bond. The water department, that can be its own bond. The library, the public works, $2 million bond. Parks and Forestry, a $1.5 million bond. And then you've got a lot of things that are kind of like together. You've got a roofing project at the zoo, a roofing project at Thatcher, a roofing project at Studley, a roofing project at Brennan, and Wamsutta. Lump all those roofing projects together and put it out to bid as one. Maybe that's an opportunity where we can save money. That's all up to the administration. Council Pregan.
Can I just say, so my schedule did not allow for the Saturday tours, but I'm in those buildings and speak to the department heads on a regular basis. It's my understanding, I know we've been very focused on the Municipal Building Commission and the MSBA at the state with the, the debt exclusion for the high school, but we're at that 20-year threshold where I'm under the impression that we were applying to be part of consideration to replace the Brennan and Wamsutta roofs because for that as well. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Lacasse or anything like that about what our status is with those applications. Because I know that there have been many times that we discussed it here on the council floor. So that would be something that would take $1 million off of the 19. And there are a couple of things. I was just curious if there are a couple of things that are listed as an urgent matter that may have been reprioritized by something else, like the fountain at Capron Park. When I spoke with the department head over there, a new building where the people aren't sitting next to fertilizer having lunch is a larger priority than putting a new spigot on the fountain. Things like that, where I would be more inclined. I'm starting to get exceptionally panicky because we're discussing at every single meeting about bonding for something. Like the amount of potential borrowing that we're looking at here is literally making my palms sweat every single week. And there are certain things that, I appreciate the manner in which you're presenting this and giving the administration the ability to pick and choose, which is what they get to do anyway. I have enjoyed the process in the past where things that we deemed, because we have direct and immediate access to our constituent base, nobody forgets Heather sitting in that back room screaming and yelling about getting a cooling center over at Willett Elementary School. 60 grand, 4 years in a row. Could we please just get it? We finally got it. So we're happy about those kinds of things. But I think, we need to be exceptionally judicious as we move forward. When this gets submitted to the administration, whatever the choices that get made and get set back down, we need to be exceptionally judicious as to how this is. I mean, the situation over at Park and Forestry with the building, if outside, how do I put this in a way that, if outside sources saw the conditions inside that building, we would have a huge problem on our hands. And those are the kinds of conversations I think I would be happy to modestly build a new building over there, prefab situation. When we relocated the DPW building, they lost their building. They had 6 bays. All of their equipment is stored outside. All of those kinds of things. So that might be the next thing that gets Heather all hot and bothered, and if we were out in the back room talking about those things. But again, palms sweaty. We're talking about a lot of bonding on a regular basis, and I'm just really getting very anxious over it. So.
How's that?
Done.
I'd like to address your concerns.
Please do.
Number one, the $10 million number in the capital improvement thing didn't come out of thin air. In the borrowing booklet that I was given, a municipality's borrowing is bank qualified if the municipality does not reasonably anticipate issuing more than $10 million in bonding. So I was trying to keep the maximum number that the council would recommend to the administration in that bank qualified number, because it gives us a lower rate. Number two, the state oversees all of your bonding. Number three, the city of Attleboro has the capacity of bonding an additional $44 million on top of the debt exclusion. So the city has the ability to do the bonding financially.
Can I ask you a question about that? So is that, you said 44 million? Oh, over the course of the next 37 years?
Over the next year.
Okay.
Over the next year.
But we're not really bonded, there's not a whole bunch being pulled this year.
Right.
For the.
Right, but understand that the city routinely bonds on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And that there's bond anticipation notes, there's tax anticipation notes, there's revenue anticipation notes, there's state issued notes. And you're right, there's school issued notes. So, as I said in the beginning of the message to the mayor, that the money for this $10 million comes from many sources. State funding, federal funding, and local funding. So, like the grant for the dam is a perfect example. It's not all Attleboro taxpayer dollars one-on-one going into these projects. The city makes use of every opportunity to use either, and there's a new one in here that I had never heard of, for water, wastewater, and environmental protection that I just don't recall ever seeing in my 8 years as a counselor. But this is saying that there's bonding available through this special thing. So
But can I read?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at the capital improvements book, it gives you a fund source. That we looked at.
Yep.
I can't even think to begin.
Chapter $70.
Well, it's Chapter $70, Chapter 90 funding, whatever. The majority of the urgents come from, there's no outside funding source. So I just want to be very clear that when it said if we're bonding, it doesn't mean it's grant money. Like, I don't want people to get confused at home saying that we might be able to borrow from this specific bank to be able to fund this particular project.
It still needs to be paid back. You're absolutely correct.
So I just want that to be crystal clear.
But I don't think anyone here, sitting here, expects to see $10 million bonded next year for capital improvements. It just can't happen.
So I would disagree. I would think that there was the potential that something like that could come down. I can guarantee that this municipal council wouldn't necessarily approve that. I think that's the reverse of that discussion.
So my goal was to put together a resolution that would distill the capital improvement book into a terse document that would fit with financial goals and all line up together nicely and neatly so that the administration could understand where the council was coming from. We're not saying go out and bond $10 million. What we're saying is that the first step, if we were to fund at least one half, and probably we're not going to be able to fund one half, which would be $9.5 million. It would be nice to clean up this book a little bit, but
when you say clean up, do you mean remove items from
thin
it?
it down a little bit. Yes. And there's some things that are in that book that are priority ones that when we were out on our meetings, we looked at it and we left the department saying, it's not making a list. So not everything that is in that big book is in this little document. But your apprehension about borrowing money and having the obligation to pay it back is warranted. I mean, that's how the city of Lawrence got itself in trouble. And Attleboro's not going to do that.
Yeah. I equate it to qualifying for a mortgage, and they're like, you can spend $400,000. I won't be able to get pizza on Friday nights for the rest of my life, but I could do that, and I don't think it's fiscally responsible to borrow right up into that threshold.
Yeah.
One last thing, though, I do appreciate the effort that you've put into the capital improvements plan. You always do a great job, and then I enjoy not having the slugfest out back that we've had previously.
I'm sorry. All set?
Yes.
I'm sorry that you mentioned the name mortgage, because a lot of people confuse mortgages with bonding, and it's not the same thing at all.
Right, but I'm sure you understand.
Right. And your scenario of being a homeowner is nothing at all like being a municipality. This is not like mortgaging our future. That is not the case at all. It is simply diverting part of the budget into taking care of the infrastructure, which we've neglected in the past. Yes, Councilor Holmes.
I just have a question about the priority. So is this department heads that have reported this, or, okay? And that's how, and then when you were doing the visits on Saturday, you were kind of scoping out what they were identifying as an urgent need, or, okay?
Yes, and that's a good point, Councilor. So for the people at home, this book is on our website, on the city website. So anyone at home can go on the website right now and see this big book. So if they have a question like, gee, I heard Richard talk about body and cruiser cameras at $177,000 for the police department. I'd like to know more about that. All they have to do is go to the city website, go to the capital improvement plan, get into the police department, and they can read what the chief said about body cameras on cruisers and on vests. So our document, there's got to be a way for me to make this document as transparent, and I'll work to do that. I don't know what I'll do with Virginia to get this maybe bolted onto the back of this on the website, I guess. Yes, Councilor Cooper?
No, I just wanted to piggyback off of the comments about your time and effort that you put in to coordinate the site visits, get them done, reviewing the requests, having a backup plan if we didn't receive the capital improvements plan in a timely way to get us to the point where we are today, preparing the resolution and just all of the work that you put into to doing this. I think that it makes for a fresh air and sunlight, as you would say, to the public to understand the capacity in which we have to pay, but also the the real conditions of what you saw on your site visits. And we talked earlier a little bit about the site visits, and I think the other thing that the site visits afford is an opportunity for the public to see it. Those are public meetings and they're public buildings, and while you are disappointed in some of the attendance at some of those, I can appreciate that, but I also think that no one can ever say that they were not given an opportunity to see the buildings from the work that you did, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have been determined this year with the new administration to try to change the policy that the council uses to get the capital improvement program done before the budget, and I succeeded, and so for that I'm very happy. My wife will be very happy when this is over. I mean, it's taken a long time. Many councils, in fact, one of the department heads said to me, in this city, the visibility of the city councils at the department level is stunning. That where this person came from, that was never the case. And even in Taunton, it's a rare event that a city councilor walks into the assessor's office. But they do. And you should not hesitate to go see what it's like to be eating lunch next to a bunch of fertilizer in the Park and Forestry Department. That building is trash. I can't imagine interviewing someone to join the Parks and Forestry Department and showing them that building.
And there's no bathroom.
And there's no bathroom, right. I don't want to get sucked down into the minutia of all the visits and all of what's in the plan, but I do want the public to know that this book represents people trying to run a department and the things that they need to make that department function. Councilor Delissio.
Thank you. I think this is a very effective message that you have here. I think capital improvements is one of the most critical planning tools we have in the city, and we've seen it time and time again as things come up. I think it's important to note that just because we can borrow up to 44 million doesn't mean we should borrow up to 44 million. But I also think the converse of that is we have money coming off our debt schedule every single year, and that's going to afford us some flexibility and some capacity. When some of these urgent projects come before us, we'll have that capability. Whereas to just say with a broad brush, which is what the point of any budget message, capital improvements message is, but I think that it's an important note to say that, we're not going to be handcuffed if we can't get a bond for $10 million. Things happen throughout the course of the year where we do have funding sources and options available to us.
I'll add to your comments, if I may, that the city of Attleboro does a better job doing capital improvement planning than a lot of other communities that farm it out to contractors. I'm very intimate with one city in Massachusetts that's been trying for 4 years to generate this document and has failed. And kudos to the planning department in the city of Attleboro. They started this many, many years ago, And the department heads know that when it comes December, they're expecting a memo from Gary. What do you want for next year? And they're already thinking ahead, you know, and they're already going, which is why I didn't want to wait. That's why I wanted to start before this book came out, because I knew they were already planning on it. The city of Attleboro does a great job planning. What we need to do is now do a good job executing, a better job executing. Councilor Reynolds.
So I just want to, first of all, I agree with Councilor Cooper, all the work that you do on this, and I can remember having done this years ago, you know, with you. So I just want to say that no one likes to have to bond the money for no reason. We have a good bond rating, and the reason that we do is because we pay it, and we pay it correctly. And sometimes we just have to do this, because the reason is that we don't want what has happened to sweeper 1, 2, and 3 to happen in every department. That the people that work for the city of Attleboro are running around, pardon the expression, with crap. Because that is what we looked at years ago and went nuts over. And I think that some of the stuff that happens here is that we know the infrastructure needs repairs. We know that. We know that a lot of the equipment is old, and we need to borrow and bond the money, because there is no other way to do it. But we have to be sure that we're taking into account how we're paying it back. It's frightening times, but if we continue to let it go, we just won't have a city that's running effectively. So I think that we have to constantly do what you're doing, and I like how you review the things that come in, so we know what the needs versus the wants are. And and that's my comments. I think you do a great job at this, Richard. And I just think that there are some things we have to consider. We can't keep letting them go year after year. I mean, we talked about this. Some of these, just the sweepers themselves, 13, 14, 17 years that they got used when they were only supposed to be used for 2 or 3 or maybe at the most 4 years. And now, you know, yes, everybody has to live within their means. I'm a big proponent of that, but we haven't always done that. Now we're trying to bring it back in, but still be able to run the city effectively. So that's where the bonding, I think, comes in.
And you're right. In each department, there's probably one thing where it's listed as urgent, and it may be urgent, but it might not be urgent. The chief and I were talking about the fingerprinting machine. The fingerprinting machine we have in the basement of the police department was purchased by the state and was leased to the city of Attleboro. And then the state said, we don't want to own this anymore. It's yours. You got to go buy the software to run the fingerprinting. So he's now running around trying to figure out and he has a revolving fund for fingerprinting. And so he's running, you know, looking to see how much is in the revolving fund, how much does the software cost. It's a maintenance agreement for the software. He's thinking, why am I tied to this fingerprint machine? You know, why am I draining all my revolving account to buy the software to keep this old fingerprinting machine going? I might as well just buy a new one for $37,000 and tell the state to take it back. It's a smarter decision. It's a smarter management decision. It's what we want our department heads to do. But it costs money. You know, I applaud all of them. I swear the fire department chief, he picked the best public relations person in the department to show us around the fire department. Eric was amazing. And Laura went into places where she'd never been before. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, I missed, and I'll have to get in touch with Dennis Walsh, because I missed that tour of the horrific building that you always talk about. I can only imagine how bad it is, because when I went into his office, what was his first name again? Derek
Corsi.
No, the guy that took us around. Why can't I remember?
Eric Johnson, the fire department.
Great guy, shows me to his office. It's in the basement, and it's like all dark and damp. I'm like, you're gonna get sick. You're gonna get like some mold spore in your lung. Like, I didn't even want to be down there, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, does your wife know that you work in this? It was so bad. So I can't imagine what the Park and Forestry building looks like, but some of the places we went, and you know, the fire department was great. It was you know, really good to see everything, and their needs and wants and hopes. And when I saw the money they had for their appliances that they want, I was like, but then I saw their appliances. I mean, I feel better knowing that their appliances were very modest, because I thought they were going to have some big, beautiful, huge industrial, and they wanted another one. And I'm like, come on. And then I saw it, and I was like, ooh, it's bad. So there's a lot of bad things going on. They're surviving, and obviously they do a great job, but the tours are great. I had to see those. I had to be a part of that, or I don't know how I would feel about anything that I'm reading if I didn't lay my eyes on it.
Glad you were there.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
While we're whipping around the kudos, I think it goes back to our conversation of a few minutes ago. You know, the bonding doesn't just happen. We have a top-notch financial team here in the city. The assessor, the auditor, the treasurer, our partners such as KeyBank, Unibank, and Bond Counsel, who all help us walk through this process, which is extremely important because, you know, our bond rating that we talk about and we're proud of didn't just happen overnight. We had to work to get to this point. So when we talk about bonds, you know, it's not just the council saying, hey, let's bond for this, and the mayor saying, yeah, let's bond for this, you know? There's a full process that it does get fully vetted before ultimately does come back to us. And I think that's really a huge compliment to our financial team that we have here in the city.
I agree with you completely. Yes, Councilor Topaz.
I agree with all the kudos, and the meetings were great, the ones that I was able to attend. And I very much appreciate this prioritized list. But I am concerned about talking about, you know, that we want to bond $10 million and saying, hey, we want to cover half of $10 million, which would be 14% of our budget, but admittedly, 10 million is from the citywide funding, 8.4 is from enterprise. So in reality, only 5 million would be from the citywide budget, and of that, there's a bunch of that money comes from either Chapter 70, Chapter 90, or grants, or whatever. So the number is actually much lower coming out of the $70 million levy itself. And so what I would prefer to see, as opposed to just saying we want to cover half and bond $10 million, is something a little bit more detailed, specifying what we actually want. So that's my first point. My second point is, on here you talk about the establishment of such a policy will result in the timely replacement of vehicles and equipment and minimize deferred maintenance. When I read this the other day, I didn't understand what policy you're talking about. Are we talking about recommending a long-term policy where we spend this, or are we talking about the policy of, you know, paying for half of it this year? Is that the recommendation? I didn't understand exactly what policy you were talking about there in the summary. That concludes my comments.
You bring up a good point, that that last paragraph, you see, that's what happens in the editing.
Of course, yeah.
That was really, really, really long, and I was trying to make it really, really short. And we'll probably just strike that entire sentence altogether to clean that up. As for your comments about enterprise and non-enterprise, I just thought that was understood, that they're two separate accounting systems, that they're two separate entities. And so that's why they're split out separately. And I kind of took that as a given, and maybe I shouldn't have. What I would like is for my committee to pass this motion so that we can get it to the council, and then when we get it to the council, ask to strike that sentence, and I think we're there. I hope we're there. So, is there any further discussion? Yes, Councilor Whipper.
Just, so my take on the such policy was the recommended funding schedule that you put in the grid above. That's how I read it. So I read the establishment of such a policy, basically maybe you left out, or to put some clarity around it, as described above. So you're establishing policy by saying you're going to complete these things in year one. These are your prioritized total urgent short-term notes. These are your long life return items. That's how I read it. I don't know if that's how you did it when you were thinking about it when you did it, but that's how I read it. I'm happy either way, striking it or leaving it, but that was how I sort of That's because that's sort of a new policy or practice for us to describe it in this way. So that's how I read that.
I would really like to see the policy come out of the Budget and Administration Committee rather than the Capital Improvement
The
Committee.
fiscal policy.
Right, the fiscal policy.
Which I see as a different policy than the policy you're creating within this capital improvements resolution.
They're linked together.
The two policies are linked. Yes, they are. But I think that what you're establishing here is policy relative to how we prioritize capital improvement projects, different from what a fiscal policy would be, but they are connected to one another. That was just my take on when I was reading this.
Thank you for
coming
that.
back.
It would not be bad for this to become the template for future years, because it distills the big book into a short list, and then it carves up that short list into short-term and long-term, and it separates it by enterprise and city side. So I thought that it seemed the most logical way, and I didn't have anything to go by, so I just did this that way. And to expedite the passage of the resolution this year, I think it's best to just take that one sentence out and let's not get mangled up in policy, because I really see that that's poor Council Delicio's responsibility. I'm still developing before the policy's developed. I'm not expressing myself well. I know I'm not, but I'm pushing is probably a better term. I'm pushing to try to get the capital improvement plan and the budget meshed together and thought of together.
Yeah, if I may just add, and then I'll stop. I think what you're doing, in my opinion, is creating policy around capital improvement policy, planning. That's, in effect, what you're doing. You're creating in that you're creating expectation that you and your committee will do the site visits, you will do the review of the material, you will prepare the resolution. Yes, it's all in the charter dates, but what you've done last year and now bringing, continuing that policy change this year is well spelled out in this year's resolution. So thank you.
Council Delicio, you got a comment?
Yeah, so, and I agree. I think a lot of what we do throughout the course of the year is interconnected. Capital improvements, budget, tax classification, right? Capitulation at the end of the year. It's all, so I guess my challenge to you, Counselor, as well, is let's think about this when we're coming up with the budget message. How do we merge the two? How do we marry the two? And I think that we'll have that opportunity over the next several weeks. But I think you're absolutely right. I think, and you've long talked about a capital improvement policy. You've talked about capital improvement budgeting, revolving funds, the whole thing. Well, I think we have the opportunity in front of us, and I look at it. Someone asked me, they're like, "Well, what's a capital improvement book really about?" Well, that's the old service merchandise catalog. This is what Mom and Dad said, I think that we'll be able to provide on Christmas morning, and then what we actually get on Christmas morning might not quite be everything that's on this list.
Exactly.
Technology.
And so when I think about it, I think that we're in a situation that we're setting the groundwork for something that could, down the road, be a little bit more inclusive.
Yeah, I think we're coming to a debt policy.
I agree.
Yeah. Yes, Council Hall.
May we have a vote soon? Because I'd like to.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
If everybody's all set, are you all set, Peter?
Just one, no, I'm not. I sat over here very quiet, Mr. Conte.
Okay. You got the
Just
floor.
a shot for the old guard. Mr. Thibodeau, Frank Cook, myself, and councilors that have come and gone. It isn't all gloom. If any of the new councilors and some of you people that have been here a few years, were here 15 years ago, 18 years ago, and you looked at that book, and all we did was shove stuff down the road, and we never got to a point where we got anything accomplished, I want to give credit to these past councilors, because we've come a long way, baby, a long, long way. We had equipment that wasn't the right equipment. We had it was a catastrophe. The last administration did a hell of a job getting us to where we are now. So it isn't all gloom, and these departments aren't all bare-boned and in it without any equipment. You could go back in time 15, 18 years ago, a new shovel was great. So give credit to the old guard. They brought this city a long, long way. Mr. Conte, I like this. I really do. I'm not blowing smoke. That big book is useless unless you can condense it down to what you got and people know the facts. But it isn't all, this isn't all new. We've come to this point only because of the past councilmen that are well-served in the past administration that did a hell of a job getting us here. And if you don't think so, go back in history.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. And that ends my comment.
Thank you. So we're ready for a vote. Councilor Hall coming back, or is she gone?
She went to the bathroom.
Okay. Let's take a vote.
I have to
Get it
vote
done.
for you. Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All absent. That concludes the business that the Capital Improvement City Development Committee has to bring before the committee members this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. All in favor?
Aye.
The Capital Improvements and City Development Committee is adjourned at 9:33. Thank you.
I'd like to call Public Safety and Emergency Management to order at 9:33. I'm going to make this short and sweet, and it's just to my members of my committee. I'm not going to open this for comment. All right. I didn't like the comments that were made from the administration to this committee on the motion before us. I have all intentions of bringing it out. It does need a little tweaking. It was never my intention or Mr. Delicio's intention to take the appointing power of the administration, this one or further ones, away from the mayor. It was our intention, or my intention, and it went back many years. I had faith in the past administration. I seen how it worked, how they were appointing firemen and policemen through real cooperation. I'm not so sure of this. We have that same thing now, or we will have it in the future with future mayors. That's why I think it's important that the chain of commands be put into effect. And this is strictly, in my opinion, the chain of commands. You do not go to war or fight crime or fight fire with people under you that you don't have trust in. And I'm going to make sure this is brought out. I think the public safety of this city is so important that I think this is a proper way that it filters down, to giving those chiefs the opportunity to hire the people they feel are the right people in the right positions. You don't hire a mechanic to do banking. You don't hire a banker to fix your lawnmower. The mayor would still have the authority to appoint the chiefs and go through that procedure that's set down by civil service and how you appoint them. But it would give the chiefs the ability to hire the people that he has to depend on, either branch, that he has to depend on to protect our citizens. It should have been done years ago, but like I said, the past administration, I think, did an excellent job in communicating with those two department heads who he appointed. So, I've never been in the military, but it sort of works that way in the military, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay. So it's not a bad idea, and it can be done. You can have a strong mayor, and you can have strong chiefs. I, through a fellow councilor, Julie, did some research for me. City of Fall River, City of New Bedford, Town of Mansfield, Town of Hull, Town of Westport has this particular system. By law, we've got to make some changes. I didn't realize, I don't think Jay realized it when he brought it in. We might have to make some changes in the law in order for us to do it. So, this is information. I'm working on it. I'm not going to call the city solicitor and blow taxpayers' money saying if and what do we do. You know, that bill goes on at $2.50 an hour. So when I talk to her, I'm going to have definite questions that she's got to answer in a lawful way so I can understand it. And I do not, and I can't be more emphatic, I do not intend on not bringing this out, but when it comes out, I want everybody to weigh in their own minds the safety of the City of Attleboro's public and how we do business in public safety. Mr. DeLisio, I see you're a member of my committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Blair, for bringing this out and having the discussion. So you bring up a very cogent point in all of this. This has become a very divisive topic, and I certainly understand. But on the record, I want to say this was never intended to remove that appointing authority of the chiefs away from the mayor. This was simply put, as I said when I introduced it, to use the Bill Parcells line. If we're asking them to cook the meal, they should be allowed to shop for their groceries. I think there'll be, and my expectation would be, that the mayor still plays a very heavy role in the discussions and in the financing and funding of those police officers.
Well, I think
this was never about, if I could, I'm sorry, I know Chair Committee, if you don't mind. This has never been about personality. This has never been about politics. This has never been about this administration or the previous administration or future administrations. This is just, in my mind, what's logical in terms of putting the hiring authority of the firefighters and the cops back to the chiefs the way it was in the city leading up to 1992, still leaving the hiring, the appointing authority of the chiefs and that chain of command intact as it is, reporting to the mayor as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just, I will not leave the committee. It's a goal, and Mr. Rhodes quoted me correctly. Somehow, before I leave this seat, it's my intention to get that passed. And hopefully, my fellow councilors that agree with me that the safety of the public is worth taking a good hard look at this. The safety of the public, first and foremost. Okay, Mr. Tuck.
Thank you, Mr. Blair, Councilor Blair. With this item, I was concerned when you started speaking tonight that you were going to try to vote on it tonight, and
no way.
My one concern, just to share with you, is that we still have some oversight from the mayor, but my intent is not to try to block this in committee. I'm very happy to, once it's ready and we get the solicitor's approval, very happy to vote it out of committee so that we could have a discussion amongst the entire council.
I was highly insulted by the comments made from the administration. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is the worst piece of legislation that's ever come before this council, right? And I stand behind it. You know, we talked tonight, I won't get into it because I could go a long way. That sidewalk to nowhere goes up my record, so we won't talk about that. That, huh?
You gonna adjourn?
I think I'll talk a little longer. Oh, you like to talk longer? No, move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
A reminder to council is that the rules and committee meeting will be here in the council chambers tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.
Don't forget to go to the food international.
Did you get all of that, George?
I had to go to the festival tomorrow.
All right.
We'll start without you.
No, that's from 4 to 7.
Okay.